The reasons I couldn't wait. Yo, what's going on? It's someone that's no one, and welcome to today's report. Today's report is coming from Pleadthefifth off Erowid. When this happened, 2003. Drug used was alcohol. Dose, a fifth, split between 3 people. The route of administration was orally through Bacardi rum. Gender, male. Weight, 135 pounds. Age, we don't have an exact age, but we can guess that they were teenagers or young adults. And prior experience, they seem to be fairly naive of drug use in general and are more so looking to get fucked up. And where this happened was in the streets of New York City. So this is our first ever alcohol experience, and I believe we've had alcohol like in 3 or 4 other experiences, or just kind of there as like beer or something like that on the side, but it never really seemed to produce that much of a great effect on those other experiences. But though I figured, let's get an alcohol experience in here, a classic one where, people get drunk as fuck. So here that is. I hope you guys do like this, and without further ado, let's dive right into it. The day started out like many other summer days. A couple of friends and I decided to get drunk. Mike, Blake, and myself. We also had a sober friend, Jasmine. The best way to do that, in our opinion, was to split a 750 milliliter bottle of 151 proof rum. So, we took a trip to our favorite local not-by-the-book liquor store and bought our goods. About $21 later, we had a large bottle of Bacardi in our bag and anticipation in our hearts. Since we're fairly new at this drinking thing, read Pussy Little Bastards. And quick note, no one jumping in here, I did try to find this Pussy Little Bastards story to, possibly have it as a sequel or prequel rather to this, but can't find it anywhere. If you guys want to look for that, I'll happily do it. But let's get back into it. Or at least Blake and Mike are. We needed chasers. I feel that Gatorade is the best sort of chaser. The taste is also bearable, for me, when mixed with such a high proof alcohol. Yet another benefit of drinking from a Gatorade bottle is that of its inconspicuous nature. For me, it has worked every time, knock on wood. We also each bought a liter of water and some mouthwash for afterwards. Parents. So, we get to this park that is quite infamous for drinking, smoking, and that sort of thing. We drink off about 1/3 of the Gatorade bottle and refill it with the rum. There were approximately 7 or 8 ounces of rum in the Gatorade cocktail. The 750 milliliter bottle of Bacardi 151 comes with a little pourer cap, so not a lot of it comes out at a time. This is probably good in bars when all people need to pour is about a shot at a time. Maybe we should have taken this as a hint. I don't know. Since we needed some motivation, we played Shot Blackjack, in which the losers have to drink a shot of their Gatorade Bacardi mixture. As we got happier, Blackjack became boring and we became obnoxious, I suppose, since our sober friend was getting annoyed. On second thought, she's perpetually annoyed, so I can't be too sure how obnoxious we were. Mike mentions that drinking his concoction is like drinking water, while Blake can hardly choke it down. I'm quite indifferent as I have a bit more experience. Not necessarily a good thing. Sitting around while drunk is nowhere near as fun as walking around while drunk, so we had to find something to do. I had to pick up some food for my dad, so that's what we did first. Admittedly, it's not the most fun thing, but it was something. Jasmine, the sober friend, and I bring the food to my house, while Mike and Blake wait outside and continue to drink. When Jasmine and I come back out, Mike is a lot drunker than Blake. He's also a skinny bastard, while Blake is not. I was slightly buzzed at that point, since I had to slow down drinking to not look so bad in front of my dad. Mike was really wasted at this point, as I remember laughing really loudly at him and slapping my knees, and I was trying to just catch up, since being only slightly buzzed but having to be around drunk bastards is a waste of $7. Blake was stumbling around and babbling something about Clay Aiken. Jasmine was just plain embarrassed, and maybe a little pissed, being sober. We stood around near my building for a while trying to decide what to do next. Jasmine wanted to go downtown to get Japanese food, so that's what we agreed to do. although it probably wasn't the best idea since I need a pretty strong stomach in general to eat Japanese food, and the liquor was not helping any in that department. But I like Japanese food, so I guess it wouldn't have been that big of a problem. To get downtown, we have to take the subway. I've been on the subway while drunk, and it's a bumpy ride that isn't too good on the stomach. Malt liquor plus hot dogs plus long, bumpy subway ride equals a sure way to get myself to puke in public. The walk from my house to the subway is about 7 blocks, but we first had to go to Jasmine's house for her to get money from her grandmother. Mike, Blake, and I wait outside. By this point, all 3 of us have finished our Gatorade cocktails, so Mike and I go to the store to get another chaser. I'm not sure if they were out of Gatorade or if I just couldn't find it, so I ended up getting some sort of cranberry juice bottle. Mike gets nothing because he's hella wasted and is lying down on the floor and wants to take a nap in the store. I had to get him up to go to the counter and pay for the juice, which I did. I remember the guy at the counter telling me the juice was $1.25, as opposed to the $1 I am used to paying. So I angrily mumble something about him ripping me off. Lord only knows what he thought. So Mike, Jasmine, Blake, and I make our way to the subway. Blake is up ahead with Jasmine talking about God knows what, while I'm acting like a crutch for Mike because he can hardly walk. He trips, I trip, and we fall in a dried up pile of dog crap. Gotta love the New York City streets. Some people were passing, they almost trip over us, laugh, and continue walking. I figure that Mike is going to need some rest, so I get him up and get him to lie uncomfortably on someone else's car, while hoping the owner isn't around to call the cops. Blake and Jasmine disappear somewhere for nearly 10 minutes, and Mike and I are just hanging there. Now, not being in the best state, I make a few choices that could have turned out not so good. I have my new Ocean Spray cranberry juice chaser, pour out half of it and replace it with more rum. I started drinking while slapping Mike intermittently to make sure he's still alive. I also give him some water to drink so he has something more to puke up. Blake shows up out of nowhere without our sober buddy. Looking back, this is probably the point where we become royally screwed. Passerby are standing and inquiring about our mental state. A cop car slows down and stares at us, but thankfully, this being the ghetto, continues going, as a few drunk off their ass teenagers are the least of their worries. Another reason to love New York City. Blake and I, being the least fucked up, decide to try and get Mike somewhere where he can just wait out the alcohol. The little baseball field was our choice, as it was big enough for us to lie around in without being suspicious. We make it across the street and maybe 10 feet up, but then sort of collapse in front of this Jehovah's Witness church building parking lot. Mike and I sat there for about 20 minutes, although it could have been 20 seconds and I wouldn't have known the difference. At this point, Mike starts puking, on my pants, on his pants, and the church's plants. Blake says something about pissing and disappears for a few minutes. He comes back and I go piss behind someone's car. I have to be pretty fucked up to piss in public, so I guess I was. Blake starts to take some pictures, and Lord only knows what he got. People who are passing by are staring. Mike gets up to go piss or something, doesn't make it, and lies down in the middle of the street. This is where I started to get panicked. People are always going to go and do something when there's a semi-conscious body in the middle of a New York City street. So, I'm assuming someone calls the cops. A crowd forms. Blake convinces me to go to the corner and pretend we don't know him to avoid getting in trouble. One cop car shows up and somehow multiplies into 6 and an ambulance. The cops were quite jovial, getting a kick out of the drunken teenager. Mike says his name is Ernie Ichiyogi, which is quite far from his real name. He also starts flipping off the cops, which I found quite hilarious. Since we were sure Mike was going to get taken care of, Blake and I started to leave. Then, somehow, Mike's mom drops from the sky and appears running towards Mike, who is now in an ambulance. She stops me, asks me what is happening, and all that fun stuff. Being quite drunk, but not nearly as drunk as Mike, I get quite scared and think that Mike has alcohol poisoning and is going to die or get permanent brain damage or something equally as terrible. I start bawling and asking her if he's okay. She says no, so I cry even harder. The walk home was terrible, since I was bawling and people were asking if I was okay. I dumped the rest of the Bacardi and called Jasmine on her cell phone, still bawling. She actually made it downtown and got Japanese food, I found out soon after. So Mike's mom is angry at me, thinking I forced him to drink, and Blake said I gave them the liquor. People do maddening things when they want to cover their ass, so I don't hold any grudges. But it's still annoying to know that he totally sold me out when we all made the consensual decision to drink. Later, I found out that Mike was taken to the hospital and they found he had a blood alcohol concentration of 0.216 or so, which is indeed very high, but not especially lethal. Mike had never had such an intense reaction to alcohol and has drank way more than 8 or so ounces he drank that day, but he also hadn't slept or eaten for 2 days. For that, he spent a night in the hospital and has a pretty funny story to tell. This is the type of drug experience that does follow under more classical intoxicant experiences that people do go through, mainly due this being alcohol. And most adolescents, I do think there is a desire to try alcohol. It is usually alcohol. I think it may be changing, but it has been the main intoxicant that we've been exposed to in our lifetimes, and we see our parents do it and whatnot, and just older siblings maybe, and we hear college parties and all this and that. And sometimes, and not always, with this mindset, there is a degree of carelessness, I think, in which the alcohol most likely increases. But these guys here just took it to a level you don't really want to take it. Public intoxication can be risky business, and if you and your friends are just stumbling around, just looking completely fucked, you're asking for some problems. Plus, I highly question the strength of their friendship, actually, in this report. Mike, to me, seemed to just be looking for a good time. Ended up drinking too much on accident, probably, and ended out a mess in which, if that happened to me, man, I would highly be depending on my friends to get me out of that, get me in a safe location. And we can partially blame it on the alcohol and just them being kind of naive toward the whole situation and making that decision to go out on the streets of New York and whatnot. And even so, from Blake specifically and Pleadthefifth, how he just later said, let's hide over here to make sure, we don't get caught up. Then Blake, just blaming it on our narrator here. And, they probably did give an effort of some sorts. But, Mike, he did end up in the street. And at that point, it was just kind of like, man, let's dip so we don't get caught up. I'm just saying, if I was out there, I don't care how drunk I would be. If, I had a homie, like the homie Marcel or something, ended out like that, I don't care if I'm dragging his ass off the street. We're leaving the scene. We're not getting caught up with the police or anything or some dumb shit. We're getting out of there to avoid any sort of trouble. But even so with them, I think we should be looking towards Jasmine. She was sober, meaning, she probably could have rounded these dudes up, made sure they didn't step too out of line. But I guess, by the way they were acting, she was getting pretty fed up with them. We don't have too much info on that. And I would guess, it's probably because she couldn't relate to the drunken state that they were in. So she just basically said, fuck it, let's go get Japanese by myself. But I'm going to leave it at that. The Bacardi can slap if you haven't tried it, and I would advise pacing yourself, and if you aren't entirely comfortable with being intoxicated, definitely don't go around and about in public. So if you did like this video, subscribe, like it, comment something below. It's been your boy, someone that's no one. Follow the socials, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.